A waitress, buried in medical debt, stands at the hostess podium of a five-star restaurant. A man, dressed in a simple, worn jacket, walks in 20 minutes late for his reservation on their busiest night. The rules are clear. 15-minute grace period. No exceptions. The manager whispers in her ear, "Just seat him. Don't make a scene." But she refuses. She chooses policy over convenience, integrity over a tip. What she doesn't know is that her manager is a criminal. Her restaurant is on the brink of collapse. And the quiet man she just turned away isn't just a customer. He's the billionaire who owns the entire building. The Crimson Sparrow was not just a restaurant, it was a performance. Every night, the curtain rose at 6 p.m. The clinking of heavy Waterford crystal glasses, the hushed murmur of transactions that cost more than a month's rent, and the scent of white truffle and seared scallops filled the air. It was a world of effortless luxury, and Ainsley Rose was one of its most critical, yet invisible stagehands. At 28, Ainsley was the lead hostess and maître d', a position that sounded far grander than its paycheck implied. She stood at the front podium, a tall, carved piece of mahogany that felt like a fortress. Her black suit was immaculate, her smile was practiced, and her feet ached in her sensible shoes. Tonight was a Friday. The reservation book, a digital beast on her tablet named Reserve Elite, was a solid wall of red. Fully committed, overbooked by 10%, banking on the statistical average of no shows. Tonight, however, it seemed everyone decided to show up. A line of patrons in bespoke suits and glittering dresses was already forming by the velvet rope. "Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Davenport. Your table is ready. Right this way." Ainsley smiled, her voice a perfect blend of warmth and efficiency. She returned to the podium just as her manager, Martin Bishop, slithered up beside her. Martin was a man who wore his expensive Brioni suits like armor, but they always seemed a size too tight, as if capturing the pressurized sleaze he exuded. "Bustling tonight, Ainsley," he said, not looking at her, but scanning the crowd. "Keep the bar sales up. Push the Dom Perignon P2 for anyone waiting more than 5 minutes." "Of course, Martin," Ainsley said, her eyes already on the next arriving party. At 8:15 p.m., a man walked in. He was alone. He didn't fit. While other patrons shimmered, he seemed to absorb the light. He wore simple dark trousers, a grey, slightly worn wool jacket, and scuffed leather boots. He looked less like a diner and more like someone who had wandered in looking for the kitchens. He approached the podium, bypassing the line. "Excuse me, sir," Ainsley said, holding up a polite hand. "There is a queue. If you'll just wait." "I have a reservation," the man said. His voice was quiet, gravelly, but held an odd note of authority. 8 p.m. The name is Bell." Ainsley's fingers flew across the tablet. "Mr. Bell. Yes, I see it. A table for one at 8 p.m. She looked up at the clock on the wall. 8:17 p.m. "I'm very sorry, Mr. Bell, but our policy for all reservations is a 15-minute grace period. As it's 8:17, your table was released to the waiting list at 8:16. The man, Mr. Bell, didn't seem angry. He just looked at her, his gaze intense. "The subway was delayed. I'm here now." "I understand, sir, and I do apologize for the inconvenience. However, we are fully committed. I gave your table to the first party on our wait list just moments ago." Ainsley gestured to the packed dining room. "I might be able to find you a seat at the bar, though it looks quite full." "I don't want the bar. I want the table I booked," he stated simply. "And I would love to give it to you, sir. But I physically do not have one. The party that took your reservation has already ordered their appetizers." Martin, sensing a bottleneck, glided over. "Is there a problem here?" "This guest, Mr. Bell, was 17 minutes late for his 8 p.m. reservation," Ainsley explained calmly. I've informed him that his table has been released per our policy." Martin's eyes flicked from Ainsley to Mr. Bell. He clearly sized up the man's inexpensive jacket and dismissed him as unimportant. But a customer, any customer, making a scene at the door was bad for business. "Ainsley, for heaven's sake," Martin hissed, leaning in so only she could hear. "Look at the line. Just find somewhere. Stick him in the alcove by the server's station. Just get him out of the doorway." Ainsley's spine stiffened. The alcove was a fire hazard. It wasn't a table. It was storage. "Martin, I can't," she whispered back. "It's against code, and it's not fair to the 24 people on the wait list who were on time." "I'm not asking you, Ainsley. I'm telling you. Make it work," Martin snapped. Mr. Bell hadn't moved. He was watching the exchange, his expression unreadable. Ainsley turned back to him, her professional smile locked in place, but her voice firm. "Sir, as my manager and I were just discussing, we unfortunately have no tables. The alcove is not a dining space, and I cannot seat you there." Martin's face turned a dangerous shade of purple. "Ainsley," he growled. "I can offer you a complimentary glass of our house, champagne at the bar while you wait," Ainsley continued to Mr. Bell, ignoring her manager. "I anticipate the next available two-top will be in approximately 90 minutes. Mr. Bell held her gaze for a long, uncomfortable moment. Ainsley felt a bead of sweat trickle down her back. Her job, the job she desperately needed, was hanging by a thread. She could feel Martin's rage vibrating next to her. But the rule was the rule. It's what kept the Crimson Sparrow from descending into chaos. It was the one thing that made the impossible puzzle of the dining room work. Finally, Mr. Bell nodded, just once. 90 minutes. I see. Would you like to wait at the bar, sir? No, he said quietly. I won't be dining with you tonight. He turned and walked out of the restaurant. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving a vacuum of stunned silence. Martin grabbed Ainsley's arm, his fingers digging into her blazer. You arrogant, stupid girl, he spat, his voice low and venomous. Do you have any idea what you just did? You embarrassed me. You undermined me. You chose a rule over a customer. Clean out your station. You're done for the night. We'll discuss your continued employment on Monday. He stormed off toward his office. Ainsley stood frozen, the blood draining from her face. The chatter of the restaurant faded to a dull roar. Fired. He was going to fire her on Monday. All because she followed the policy. She leaned against the podium, the thought of her sister's medical bills rising in her throat like bile. The bus ride home was a special kind of humiliation. Ainsley sat with her forehead pressed against the cold glass, the fluorescent lights of the bus turning the rain-slicked streets of the city into a smear of neon despair. She had left the Crimson Sparrow through the back alley, avoiding the sympathetic looks from Ben Carter, the head bartender, who had seen the whole exchange. He'd given her a look that said, I'm sorry, Martin's a tyrant. But he couldn't do anything. Her apartment, a fourth-floor walk-up in a neighborhood that was charitably called Up and Coming, was quiet. The only light came from the small television in the living room. Ainsley, is that you? You're home early, a voice called out. Ainsley forced a smile as she walked into the small, cluttered room. Her younger sister, Lucy Rose, was bundled in a mountain of blankets on the sofa. Lucy was 22, but a severe autoimmune disorder had put her life on pause, trapping her in a cycle of painful flare-ups and crippling fatigue. Hey, Luce, Ainsley said, dropping her keys in a chipped bowl by the door. Restaurant was slow. Martin let me go early. It was a weak lie, but it was better than the truth. Lucy frowned. Her eyes, usually so bright, were clouded with pain. On a Friday? Really? Yeah, weird, right? Ainsley bustled into the tiny kitchenette, rinsing a glass she didn't need to rinse, just to avoid eye contact. On the counter, next to a wilting basil plant, was a pile of envelopes. All of them had the same ominous, red-stamped, past due warning. The hospital, the pharmacy, the specialists. Did you get a chance to call the insurance company about the Kynatrel coverage? Lucy asked, her voice small. Ainsley's shoulders slumped. The new experimental drug, Kynatrel, was the only thing that had given Lucy any relief in months. But the insurance company, Patriot Health, had decided last week it was no longer medically necessary. The cost out of pocket was $4,000 a month, Ainsley's entire salary. I was on hold for 45 minutes today before my shift, Ainsley said, finally turning around. They're still reviewing the appeal. Don't you worry about it. I'll handle it. We can't afford it, can we? Lucy whispered, her eyes filling with tears. I'm sorry, Ainsley. I'm so sorry I'm doing this to you. Hey. None of that, Ainsley said, crossing the room and sitting on the edge of the sofa, taking her sister's hand. You are not doing anything. We are a team. The Rose sisters, remember? We'll figure it out. I'll pick up more shifts. Maybe I'll ask Ben if he needs help at the bar. If I even have a job on Monday, she thought, her stomach twisting into a cold knot. She spent the next 2 hours pretending everything was normal. They watched a brain-numbing reality TV show, and Ainsley made them both grilled cheese sandwiches. But her mind was replaying the scene with Mr. Bell over and over. Was she wrong? Should she have just crammed him into the alcove, broken the fire code, insulted the other waiting guests, and followed her manager's cowardly order? No, the policy was there for a reason. It was about fairness. The Crimson Sparrow's reputation was built on its impeccable, unbending standards. She hadn't broken the standard, she had upheld it. But integrity didn't pay for Kynatrel. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Ben Carter. Ben, hey, you okay? Martin was breathing fire after you left. Said he was writing you up for gross insubordination. Ainsley, I'm fine. He told me to go home and that we'd talk Monday. I'm pretty sure I'm fired. Ben, damn, I'm so sorry, Ainsley. It's not right. You did the right thing. He was trying to get you to break code. Ainsley, try telling that to my landlord. Thanks for checking in, Ben. See you Monday. Maybe. Ben, hold tight. Martin's an idiot. He can't fire his best mate D. He's just posturing. Ainsley wished she could believe him. But she knew Martin. He held grudges, and she had publicly defied him. She spent the entire weekend in a state of suspended dread. She polished her resume. She scoured online job boards, but maitre d' positions at places that could support her and Lucy were few and far between. She called the insurance company again and was put on hold for 2 hours before being disconnected. By the time Monday morning arrived, Ainsley hadn't slept in nearly 48 hours. She put on her best black suit, the one she'd bought at a Goodwill in a richer neighborhood. She did her hair, put on her makeup, and walked to the bus stop, feeling as though she were walking to her own execution. She had to beg for her job. She had to swallow her pride, apologize to Martin, and promise it would never happen again. The thought made her feel sick. She arrived at 10 a.m. for the standard pre-lunch briefing. Martin's office door was closed. Ben was behind the bar, polishing glasses with a vigor that betrayed his anxiety. "He's not in yet," Ben murmured as she passed. "Big storm's coming, though. I can feel it." Ainsley just nodded and went to the hostess podium. Her tablet was there. She logged into the Reserve Elite system, her fingers moving on autopilot. She might as well work until the axe fell. At 10:30 a.m., Martin burst through the front doors. He wasn't in his usual slick suit. He looked frazzled, his hair a mess and his face pale. "Ainsley, my office. Now," he barked. Ainsley took a deep breath, straightened her jacket, and followed him. This was it. But before she could even enter his office, the main phone line at the podium began to ring, an urgent, piercing sound. Then the private line to Martin's office rang. Then Ainsley's tablet started flashing a bright red error message. "System error. All reservations deleted." "What is that? What's going on?" Martin yelled, stopping in his tracks. Ainsley stared at the tablet in horror. The entire day's bookings, lunch and dinner, were gone. Friday's full book, wiped. The entire week, blank. "The system," Ainsley whispered. "Martin, all the reservations they're just gone." Martin shoved her aside and grabbed the tablet. He frantically stabbed at the screen. "No, no, 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 that's impossible." The phone rang again. Ainsley answered it. "The Crimson Sparrow, good morning." "This is Catherine Pierce, assistant to the Honourable Judge Peterson," a sharp voice snapped. "I am calling to confirm his 1 p.m. private dining reservation for 12 guests. I'm not seeing it on your online portal." Ainsley's blood ran cold. Judge Peterson was one of their most powerful and notoriously difficult VIPs. She looked at the blank screen. "1 moment, please, Ms. Pierce." She turned to Martin, her hand over the receiver. "It's Judge Peterson's assistant, confirming his 1 p.m. for 12. Martin Bishop's face went from pale to ghostly white. He looked at Ainsley, and his expression shifted from panic to something new, something calculating and cold. "Ainsley," he said, his voice dropping to a theatrical whisper of discovery. "This is your station. You were the first one here. You're the only one with full admin access to the book." Ainsley's stomach dropped. "Martin, what are you saying?" "I'm saying you're fired," he snarled. "And I'm calling the police. You did this. You sabotaged us because I sent you home on Friday. You sabotaged the entire restaurant. Martin, that's insane. Why would I do that?" Ainsley's voice was shaking, a mixture of terror and outrage. "I need this job. To get back at me," Martin roared, loud enough for the gathering kitchen and bar staff to hear. He was playing to an audience now. "You were insubordinate on Friday. You defied a direct order. And now, because you knew you were going to be fired, you decided to burn the whole place down. You deleted the backups. My God, you probably cost us millions." "I didn't. I wouldn't even know how to delete the backups," Ainsley protested, her mind racing. She could hear Judge Peterson's assistant still talking on the phone she held. "Ms. Pierce, I seem to be having a technical issue. Please hold." Ben Carter hurried over from the bar. "Martin, what's going on? You can't seriously think Ainsley did this." "Stay out of it, Carter." Martin pointed a trembling finger at Ainsley. I saw you come in here this morning, straight to that tablet. You were logged in for 20 minutes before I even arrived. Plenty of time to destroy the system." "I was checking the seating plan," Ainsley cried. "I was doing my job." "Your job is over. Get out." Martin grabbed the tablet from her. "Security," he bellowed, though the restaurant didn't have dedicated security, just a porter named Hank. "Get her out of my restaurant. She's suspended, pending a criminal investigation." Ainsley was frozen. This wasn't happening. It was a nightmare. "Martin, please," she begged, tears welling in her eyes. "I swear to you, I didn't do this. You know I didn't." "All I know," Martin said, his voice dripping with false regret, "is that a loyal employee wouldn't sabotage the company. An angry, vengeful one would. Get out! Now!" Ben stepped between them. "Martin, stop. You're making a huge mistake. Think about this. Why would she? One more word, Carter, and you're suspended too for interfering with an internal investigation. Now get out." Defeated, Ainsley backed away. The faces of her colleagues were a blur of confusion and suspicion. Martin had planted the seed. He was the manager. She was just a hostess. Who would they believe? She turned and fled, pushing through the heavy glass doors and onto the street, this time in the full light of day, the humiliation burning even brighter. She walked for blocks, not knowing where she was going, her breath coming in ragged sobs. Fired. Not just fired, but accused of being a criminal. She could be arrested. How could she ever get another job? How could she pay for Lucy's quinatrelle? She ended up at a Cyber Beans coffee shop, her hands shaking so hard she could barely hold her phone. She called Ben. "He's lost his mind, Ainsley," Ben said, his voice hushed. He was clearly still at work, probably in the staff locker room. "He's telling everyone you had a total breakdown. He's on the phone with the Reserve Elite Tech support right now, screaming at them. He's calling Judge Peterson's office to personally apologize, blaming a disgruntled employee. He's setting you up, brick by brick." "But Ben, the logs, the IT logs will show I didn't do it, right?" Ainsley pleaded. "They can see who presses what." "Maybe," Ben said, sounding doubtful. "But Martin is the one talking to them. He controls the narrative. He's probably telling them you stole his password or something. Ainsley, you need to protect yourself." "How? He's the manager. I'm nobody." "No, you're not," Ben said fiercely. "You're the most honest person in that building. Listen, I have to go. He's coming out of the office. Don't just let this happen. Fight it." The line clicked. Ainsley stared at her phone. Fight it. How? She thought about the system. Reserve Elite. It was a cloud-based platform. Maybe she could access it from outside the restaurant. She opened her laptop, her hands still shaking, and logged into the public-facing portal. Her password and username still worked. Martin hadn't thought to deactivate her credentials yet. She clicked through the settings, her heart pounding. She wasn't a tech expert, but she knew the system. She navigated to the Account Admin panel, then Activity Log. A spinning wheel appeared. Access denied. Super admin privileges required. Of course, Martin had the only super admin account. He was the only one who could see the master log of all actions, including deletions. She could see her actions, logging in, seating tables, changing statuses, but not the kind of kill switch deletion that had just happened. She slumped in her chair, defeated. He had all the power. Then a memory sparked. Something from Friday night, just after Martin had berated her, just before she left. She'd gone to the back office to get her bag. Martin was in his office, his back to the door, logged into the POS, point of sale system, not the reservation tablet. He was typing furiously, and he'd flinched and minimized the screen when he heard her. At the time, she thought he was just angry. But now, the POS system, a linear pay, was separate from Reserve Elite, but the two talked to each other to sync checks with tables. "Ben," she texted, her fingers flying. "Quick question. You've seen Martin on the POS system in his office, right? In the back-end management part?" "Ben. All the time. He's always reconciling accounts," he says, especially at the end of the night. Ainsley. "Does he ever look shifty?" Ben. Ainsley. "He's Martin. He always looks shifty." "What are you thinking?" Ainsley. I don't know. But he was on it Friday night, right after the Mr. Bell incident, and he looked like a kid caught stealing. He was in the inventory module." Ben. "Weird. Why would he be in inventory?" "That's the chef's and my job." Before Ainsley could reply, her phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Hello? Is this Ainsley Rose, an employee of the Crimson Sparrow?" A crisp, professional voice asked. "Yes. Who is this?" "My name is Laura Jenkins. I'm with Ethelred Holdings, the parent company of the restaurant. We've been alerted to a significant data breach at your location. We are requesting all staff, report to the main dining room for an emergency meeting at 2 p.m. But my manager, Martin Bishop, he suspended me, Ainsley said, confused. Mr. Bishop's authority has been temporarily superseded, the woman said, her voice like ice. 2 p.m. Ms. Rose, do not be late. Ainsley walked back into the Crimson Sparrow at 1:55 p.m. The restaurant was closed, a closed for private event sign hastily taped to the door. The dining room, usually warm and buzzing, was cold and silent. The entire staff, kitchen, servers, bartenders, porters, was gathered in a nervous semicircle around the main dining area. Martin Bishop was standing near the front, trying to look like he was in charge, but his face was slick with sweat. He shot Ainsley a look of pure venom. "What is she doing here? I told her she was suspended." "I invited her," said a voice from the doorway. It was the woman from the phone, Laura Jenkins, dressed in a severe dark grey suit, holding a Kestrel Cyber Solutions branded laptop. Behind her stood two men in identical suits, looking more like private security than IT. And behind them, stepping into the light of the restaurant, was Mr. Bell. He was not wearing the worn wool jacket. He was in a perfectly tailored, charcoal grey suit that probably cost more than Ainsley's car. He wasn't Mr. Bell. He was Robert Grayson. Ainsley felt the floor drop out from under her. She'd seen his picture once, in a Forbes article Ben was reading about the city's wealthiest moguls. Robert Grayson, the reclusive, press-shy billionaire CEO of Ethelred Holdings, the vast, shadowy corporation that owned the Crimson Sparrow, a dozen other restaurants, 3 hotel chains, and a shipping empire. A collective gasp went through the staff. Martin Bishop looked like he had seen a ghost. Mr. Grayson, sir," Martin sputtered, rushing forward, his hand extended. "What an honor. We had no idea you were... Robert Grayson ignored the hand. He walked past Martin and stood in the center of the room. His gaze was just as intense as it had been on Friday. But now, it wasn't just a customer's gaze. It was the gaze of an owner, an executioner. "Good afternoon," Grayson said, his quiet voice silencing the room instantly. "As you've been told, there has been a significant data breach. The entire reservation system for this, my flagship restaurant, has been wiped. The personal data of our clients from the last 5 years has been compromised. This is an act of corporate sabotage." He paused, letting the weight of the words sink in. "Mr. Bishop," Grayson said, turning his head slowly, "you have filed a report with our head office and with the local police, accusing Miss Ainsley Rose of this crime." "Yes, sir," Martin said, regaining a sliver of his confidence. "She was disgruntled. I had to send her home for insubordination on Friday, and she came in this morning and—" "Insubordination," Grayson interrupted, his voice flat. "Tell me about that. What was the incident?" Martin froze. "It was a customer, sir. A difficult one. She refused to seat him. She was belligerent." "A difficult customer," Grayson repeated. "Was that customer by any chance named Mr. Bell?" Martin's blood seemed to drain from his face. I don't... Yes, I believe that was the name." "I was Mr. Bell," Grayson said simply. The silence in the room was absolute. Ben, standing near the bar, actually dropped a glass, the sound a sharp explosion in the tension. "I arrived 17 minutes late for an 8 p.m. reservation," Grayson continued, his voice a calm, narrative monotone. "I was informed by Ms. Rose that my table had been given away, per the 15-minute policy. I was offered a seat at the bar or a 90-minute wait. I declined and left." He turned his piercing gaze on Martin. You, Mr. Bishop, ordered Ms. Rose to make it work and stick me in the alcove. Is that correct? Sir, I was trying to show hospitality. I didn't recognize you, of course, but I treat every customer. You ordered your hostess to violate the city's fire code, Grayson said, cutting him off. You ordered her to break our company's written policy on fairness to the wait list. You ordered her to undermine the very integrity this restaurant is built on. He then looked at Ainsley. And you, Ms. Rose. You refused. Ainsley's heart was hammering against her ribs. She could only nod. You refused your manager's direct, improper order. You upheld company policy in the face of me, and in the face of him. He turned back to Martin. I didn't come here today because a hostess followed the rules, Mr. Bishop. I came here because my cybersecurity team, he gestured to Laura Jenkins, flagged a massive financial irregularity in your nightly reports. I was testing your management to see if the rumors of chaos and protocol slippage were true. Ms. Rose proved the front-of-house staff is, at least, solid. Grayson's gaze hardened. But the sabotage, that's a different matter. You accused Ms. Rose. You said she was the only one with access. But that's not true, is it, Martin? There is one other level of access. Super admin. The one you hold. I would never, Martin shouted, his voice cracking. It was her. Check the logs. A splendid idea, Grayson said. Ms. Jenkins, if you would. Laura Jenkins stepped forward and plugged a small, high-tech drive into the main terminal at the podium. The main widescreen TV behind the bar, usually showing sports, flickered to life, displaying the Kestrel Cyber logo. Mr. Bishop is correct that the reserve elite logs were wiped, Laura said, her voice amplified by a small speaker. However, he seems to be unaware that Ethelred Holdings mirrors all data to an off-site, immutable server in real time. A long string of code and timestamps appeared on the screen. At 10:19 a.m. this morning, Laura continued, a Level 5 deletion command was executed, wiping the primary server. The command was initiated not from this terminal, but from the IP address associated with the back-office PC. The user, M. Bishop Sparrow Super Admin. Martin Bishop staggered back, shaking his head. No, she must have. She stole my password. She framed me. That would be a plausible theory, Laura said. Except for one thing. The deletion wasn't the first action you took this morning, Mr. Bishop. It was the second. She typed another command. A new window opened. It was the Alinea Pay POS system, the inventory module. At 10:03 a.m., just before the system crashed, you executed a backdated inventory write-off for 48 bottles of Dom Perignon P2, 24 bottles of Chateau Lafite Rothschild, 1982, and 60 pounds of A5 Wagyu beef, total value, $114,000. You filed it under promotional comps, Judge Peterson's party. Ainsley's mind flashed. Judge Peterson, the reservation Martin knew was coming in. The problem, Martin, Grayson said, stepping forward, is that Judge Peterson's party wasn't until 1 p.m. You were comping items for a party that hadn't even arrived yet. And you were deleting their reservation to hide the evidence. The truth, when it finally spooled out from Laura Jenkins's laptop, was more sordid and desperate than Ainsley could have imagined. Mr. Bishop has not been just comping items, Laura explained, as a spreadsheet filled the screen. For the last 18 months, he has been using a ghost reservation exploit. He would create fake VIP bookings in the Reserve Elite system, attach massive, fabricated promotional comps in the Alinea Pay system, and then check out the ghost tables after hours. Ben Carter let out a low whistle. But the inventory, the physical bottles, I'd know if 48 bottles of P2 went missing. That's the clever part, Grayson said, picking up the narrative. He wasn't taking the bottles. He was faking the comps. The restaurant was being charged for the promotional cost of the items, but the items never left the cellar. Instead, Mr. Bishop was diverting the payment for those comps from the restaurant's promotional budget directly into a shell corporation. The Shell Corporation, Bishop Hospitality Services, was traced to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands, Laura added, clicking to a new screen showing bank logos. An account registered in his wife's maiden name. Over $1.8 million has been embezzled in 18 months. The room was deathly quiet. Martin Bishop was backed against the wall, his chest heaving, his face ashen. "So, what happened this morning?" Grayson asked, posing the question to the room, but staring directly at Martin. "I'll tell you, he was getting sloppy. The rumors of financial irregularities I'd been hearing. That was my audit team getting close." Martin panicked. "Then Friday night, I showed up. Mr. Bell, a quiet, observant man. Martin didn't know who I was, but he thought I might be an auditor, a secret shopper. He was terrified I'd seen something. But the real problem," Grayson continued, "was Judge Peterson's reservation, a real VIP, a real party of 12. Martin had already used the 1 p.m. slot for a ghost booking of his own, pre-comping thousands of dollars. He couldn't have a real party and his ghost party at the same table, and if the judge's assistant called and found 2 bookings, the whole scam would unravel." Ainsley suddenly understood. "So, he had to delete one," she whispered. "He deleted the judge's booking, planning to tell him it was a simple, clerical error. But he couldn't risk the system logs showing he deleted it." "Precisely," Grayson nodded. "He needed a scapegoat, and Ms. Rose, his principled, insubordinate hostess, was the perfect choice. He decided to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. He would delete the entire system, blame her for the sabotage, and in the chaos, the one-time deletion of Judge Peterson's booking and his own ghost reservation would be lost forever. A clean slate, Martin Bishop finally snapped. She made me," he shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at Ainsley. "She's the one, with her perfect rules, her judgmental staring. She knew. She was trying to expose me." "She knew nothing, Martin." Ben Carter suddenly spoke up, his voice shaking with rage. "She was just doing her job, the one you weren't doing. You all. I built this place." Martin scrambled, looking for an exit, but the 2 security men from Kestrel had moved to flank the doors. "You built nothing," Robert Grayson said. His voice was no longer quiet. It was a cold, hard blade. "You were a custodian, and you stole from the house you were meant to protect. Ms. Jenkins, have you notified the police?" "They are waiting in the lobby, sir," Laura replied. As if on cue, 2 uniformed officers entered the restaurant. Martin Bishop saw them and seemed to deflate, all the fight going out of him. He slid down the wall into a pathetic heap. "Martin Bishop," one of the officers said, "you are under arrest for embezzlement, wire fraud, and destruction of corporate property." As the officers pulled him to his feet and cuffed him, Martin's eyes locked on Ainsley. They were filled with a desperate, burning hatred. This is your fault. You and your stupid, stubborn pride." Ainsley just stood tall, silent, as they led him away. The heavy glass doors clicked shut, and the performance was finally over. Robert Grayson let out a long breath. He looked around at the stunned, silent staff. "Well," he said, "that was unfortunate. However, we have a restaurant to run. Judge Peterson will be here in—" He checked his watch, a simple, elegant Patek Philippe. "Less than an hour, and we have no reservation system." He turned to the team. "So, here is what we're going to do. Ben Carter, you're the acting floor manager. get the bar and service staff ready. Chef, he called to the kitchen team, prepare the tasting menu for 12, on the house. Laura, get Judge Peterson's assistant on the phone. Tell her Mr. Grayson is personally hosting them today as an apology for a management system upgrade. Everyone else, clean this place up. Let's show them what the Crimson Sparrow is really about. The staff, shocked but galvanized, exploded into action. It was a chaotic, beautiful dance of professionals snapping back to work. Ms. Rose, Grayson said, his voice quiet again. Ainsley. A word in my office, please. Ainsley's brow furrowed. Your office? Grayson smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. Yes. I've had one upstairs on the mezzanine for 5 years. I find it's the best way to keep an eye on my investments. The office was not an office. It was a sprawling, glass-walled penthouse apartment overlooking the city, accessible by a private elevator hidden behind a panel in the restaurant's wine cellar. The room was minimalist and modern, dominated by a single, massive oak desk and a wall of windows. Robert Grayson walked to a small, built-in espresso machine. Coffee? I imagine you could use one. Yes, please, Ainsley said, her voice barely a whisper. She felt like she was in a dream. She was standing in a billionaire's secret apartment, having just watched her boss get arrested. Grayson handed her a small, steaming cup. Please, sit. Ainsley sat on the edge of a sleek, black leather sofa. Grayson didn't sit. He stood by the window, looking down at the city. I founded Ethelred Holdings, he began, on a single principle. Integrity is the only non-negotiable asset. You can have a bad quarter. You can lose a supplier. You can have a menu that fails. But if you lose your integrity, you have lost the business. It's over. He turned to face her. I've been hearing rumors about Martin for 6 months. Small things. Staff turnover, food costs creeping up, complaints about favoritism with reservations. I couldn't get my auditors in without tipping him off, so I decided to come myself. As Mr. Bell, Ainsley said, understanding. As Mr. Bell, he confirmed. I wanted to see what would happen if the system was stressed. Would the staff break protocol for a demanding customer? Would the manager enforce the standard? You, Ms. Rose, were the test, and you passed. Magnificently. I was just following the rules, sir. No, he said, holding up a hand. You were defending the rules, against your manager, who was actively pressuring you to break them. That takes more than knowledge. That takes character. It's what I've been looking for. He walked over and sat in the chair opposite her. Martin's extracurricular activities were a shock. I knew he was a bad manager. I didn't know he was a world-class thief. He did, however, do me one favor. He created a job opening. Ainsley's heart skipped a beat. The position of general manager for the Crimson Sparrow is now vacant, Grayson said. It is a high-pressure, high-reward position. It requires absolute operational control, a deep understanding of hospitality, and zero tolerance for anything less than perfection. It's a 6-figure job with a significant bonus structure. He leaned forward. But I'm not offering it to you. Ainsley's face fell. Oh. I'm offering you something better, he said, a glint in his eye. Martin was just one location. I have 12 restaurants in this city. All of them are run by individual GMs. What I lack, what this Martin situation has proven I desperately need, is someone at the top. Someone who isn't a lifer in the industry, steeped in its bad habits. Someone with principles. Sir, I don't understand. I'm creating a new position, effective immediately. Director of Regional Operations for Ethelred Restaurants. You would report directly to me. You would be responsible for auditing all front-of-house operations, training all general managers on protocol and standards, and ensuring that the integrity of my brand is never, ever compromised again. You would be my eyes and ears, my standard bearer." Ainsley was speechless. Her mind was blank. Director of Regional Operations. This is... "I'm a hostess," she finally stammered. "You were a hostess," Grayson corrected. "You are the only person in this entire company I trust not to fold under pressure. I can teach you how to read a P&L sheet. I can't teach you character." He named a salary. It was a number so large that Ainsley's brain simply refused to process it. It was more than she made in 5 years. "It also comes," he continued, "with the full executive benefits package. That includes our top-tier Patriot Health insurance plan. Platinum level, 0 deductible. Covers all experimental treatments. For you and your entire family." Ainsley burst into tears. It wasn't a delicate cry. It was a raw, shuddering sob that came from a place of bone-deep exhaustion. The stress of Lucy's illness, the Kynatril, the past due notices, the terror of being fired. It all came pouring out. Grayson didn't say anything. He simply walked to his desk, took out a box of tissues, and set it on the table in front of her. "I'm sorry," Ainsley choked out, wiping her eyes. "It's my sister Lucy. She's sick. The insurance. They cut her off." "I know," Grayson said softly. "My team, Kestrel, they don't just do cyber. When you became a person of interest Friday night, they did a full background check." Lucy rose. 22, autoimmune disorder. Denied coverage for Kynatril. Bills totaling $82,000. He pushed a checkbook across the table. "This is a signing bonus. Let's call it an integrity bonus. It should be enough to clear that debt and cover her expenses until the new insurance kicks in." Ainsley stared at the check. It was for $100,000. "I can't accept this," she whispered. "Yes, you can," Robert Grayson said firmly. "You earned it. You earned it on Friday night at 8:17 p.m. Now, pull yourself together, Ms. Rose. We have a lot of work to do. Your first act as Director of Operations will be to help me hire your replacement, a new general manager for the Crimson Sparrow. I'm thinking Ben Carter. What's your opinion?" Ainsley took a deep, shaky breath. She looked at the check. She looked at the man who had, in the span of 1 hour, torn her life apart and put it back together, infinitely better. "I think," she said, her voice finding its strength, "that Ben Carter is an excellent choice, but he'll need training on the new inventory protocols. I'll get started on the manual right away." Robert Grayson smiled. "Welcome to the team, Ainsley." 6 months later, Ainsley Rose walked through the heavy glass doors of the Crimson Sparrow. She didn't pause. She didn't hesitate. The polished mahogany podium, once her fortress and her prison, was now just the first stop in her workday. The new hostess, a bright young woman named Sarah, looked up and smiled. "Good morning, Miss Rose. Mr. Carter is expecting you. The 10 a.m. audit report is already on his desk." "Thank you, Sarah," Ainsley said, her voice warm but clear. She was no longer in the simple black blazer from Goodwill. She wore a razor-sharp, navy blue Tom Ford pantsuit. Her laptop bag was a structured Toomey, and her heels clicked on the marble floor with a quiet, undeniable authority. The staff, prepping for the lunch rush, no longer looked at her with the sympathetic pity of colleagues, but with a palpable, earned respect. The atmosphere wasn't just clean, it was energized. The hushed tension of Martin's era was gone, replaced by the confident buzz of a team that knew exactly what it was doing. Ben Carter, looking every bit the general manager in a tailored suit, emerged from the dining room, a tablet in his hand. "Ainsley, Right on time, he beamed. You know I am, she smiled. How are we? Better than good, Ben said, leading her to a quiet corner table. We're 100% clean. The Kestrel team did their full audit last week, and your new inventory protocols. Well, they're a nightmare to implement, but they're bulletproof. Not a single ghost bottle. Good. And food cost? Nailed it. Remember how Martin used to scream about the price of scallops? Ben said, lowering his voice conspiratorially. Turns out, when you're not embezzling $1.8 million, you can afford to pay the staff a living wage and be 30% in the black. It's amazing what honesty does for the bottom line, Ainsley murmured, looking around the room that held so many ghosts for her. And the front door? Ben laughed. Oh, you'll love this. We had a city councilman try to pull a fast one last week. Showed up 25 minutes late for his 8 Waush p.m., flashed his credentials, and demanded his table. Sarah here. He nodded to the new hostess. Didn't even flinch. Politely informed him of the 15-minute policy and offered him a seat at the bar. He was stunned. Threw a fit. I came over, backed her up, and he sat at the bar looking like he'd swallowed a lemon. He's already booked again for next week, and I'll bet you $1,000 he'll be on time. Ainsley nodded, a deep sense of satisfaction settling in her. The standard is the standard. The standard is the standard, Ben agreed. You've scared the entire company straight, Ainsley, in the best way. After an hour of reviewing the numbers, Ainsley left the restaurant. She hailed a cab, a simple act that still felt like a luxury, and watched the city streets blur past. She saw the bus stop where she had stood in the cold rain, her world shattered after Martin had fired her, accusing her of being a criminal. The memory still had the power to make her chest tighten, but now it was a reminder of distance traveled. She didn't go to her old fourth-floor walk-up. She went to a bright, modern condo building in a quiet neighborhood, one with a doorman who greeted her by name and an elevator that whisked her upstairs. She opened her door not to silence, and a pile of red-stamped past due notices, but to the smell of oil paints and... Was that garlic? In the studio, a voice called out, vibrant and full of life. Ainsley walked into the spare bedroom, now a fully stocked art studio, bathed in afternoon light. Lucy, her cheeks full and rosy, her eyes bright, was standing at a large easel. She wasn't frail. She wasn't bundled in blankets. She was wearing paint-smeared overalls, her hair tied up in a messy bun, and she was dancing slightly to the music playing from a small speaker. She was healthy. "What do you think?" Lucy asked, turning around, her face lit with a grin. "It's for the new hotel lobby. A thank you for the gallery sponsorship." "Luce, it's incredible," Ainsley said, her voice thick. She hugged her sister, feeling the solid, strong frame. This was the real win. This was the bonus, the salary, the title, all made real. "I got the new blood panel back this morning," Lucy whispered, hugging her back tightly. "The doctor said my inflammation markers are... Ainsley, they're normal. For the first time in 3 years, they are in the normal range." "Oh, Lucy," Ainsley said, tears welling. The Kinatril, fully covered from day one of her new executive insurance plan, had been a miracle. "And," Lucy said, pulling away, her eyes sparkling, "Mr. Grayson's assistant called. The gallery sponsorship. It's not just a sponsorship. He's buying my entire first collection, outright. He's fronting the cost for the gallery opening and flying in a critic from London. He said..." Lucy giggled. "Investment in true talent is like integrity. It always pays dividends. He's such a billionaire." They shared a laugh, a warm, genuine sound that filled the new apartment. The word billionaire was no longer a terrifying, distant concept. It was just Mr. Grayson. Ainsley's phone buzzed. It was a text from the man himself. RG. Are you free? Site visit. 200 West 57th. She kissed her sister goodbye. Order whatever you want for dinner, she said, tapping her wallet. I'll be late. Big meeting. Don't work too hard, Director Rose, Lucy teased. Just hard enough, Ainsley smiled. The cab took her to a massive, raw construction site near the park. She was handed a hard hat and directed to the 60th floor. Robert Grayson was standing in the middle of a cavernous concrete and steel shell, the wind whistling through the open framework. The panoramic view of the city was breathtaking. Ainsley, he said, waving her over. He wasn't smiling. He looked taxed. Tell me what you think. It's ambitious, she said, her mind already calculating staffing models, operational flow, and security protocols. It's a nightmare, Grayson countered, running a hand through his hair. It's going to be my new global flagship. I'm poaching a 3-star Michelin chef from Paris, Antoine Dubois. He's a certifiable genius, an artist, but he thinks inventory protocols are an insult to his creative process. He's already 80K over budget on specialty fungi, whatever that means. He wants to order whatever he wants, whenever he wants, and he's threatening to quit if I stifle his genius. Ainsley didn't flinch. She looked at the blueprints the architect was holding. I'll fly to Paris on Monday, she said simply. I'll meet with his old sommelier and his old maître d'. I'll find out what actually makes him work, not what he says he wants. I'll build a custom inventory system that gives him the feeling of creative freedom while keeping him on a financial leash. He'll get his fungi, but it'll be on our terms and in our budget. Grayson looked at her, the deep lines of worry around his eyes visibly softening. This was it. This was why he'd hired her. She wasn't just an enforcer, she was a strategic problem solver. We'll handle it, Ainsley said, her voice calm and absolute. Grayson let out a long breath, a rare, relieved smile touching his lips. Yes, I suppose we will. He stood beside her, both of them looking out over the city. You know, Ainsley, when Martin was being led away, his last words to you, he told you it was all your fault. Ainsley went still. The memory, the venom in Martin's eyes, still had the power to send a shiver down her spine. I remember. Every word. He was right, Grayson said quietly. He gestured, not just to the half-built room, but to the entire glittering skyline. All of this. The Sparrow is profitable. Ben Carter is a true leader. Your sister is healthy and about to become a star. This impossible, beautiful glass box in the sky. It is all your fault. Your fault for choosing integrity when it was the hardest, most terrifying choice to make. Your fault for not breaking. He turned to her. Thank you for that. Ainsley smiled, the weight of the compliment settling comfortably on her shoulders. A perfect fit. She took the offered blueprints from the architect, unrolling them with a confident snap of her wrist. Her sharp gaze was already seeing the finished room, the flow of service, the wiring for the terminals. You're welcome, sir, she said. Now let's talk about the hostess podium. I have some ideas, and I think Chef Dubois will find that my new system enhances his creativity once he understands it. That is the power of integrity. Ainsley Rose had every reason to break the rules. She was threatened by her boss, and she was desperate to save her sister. It would have been easy to just seat the man in the alcove. But she chose the hard, right over the easy wrong. She held on to her principles, even when it cost her. Or so she thought. In the end, her integrity wasn't a liability. It was her single greatest asset. It was the one thing the billionaire owner couldn't buy and was desperate to find. That one moment of character didn't just save her job, it changed her entire life. What would you have done? Is a rule always a rule? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story reminded you that good character always pays off, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story of justice and karma.